Welcome to the Coins channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Most people glance at their nickels without a second thought, tossing them into jars or using them for parking meters, never realizing that one particular coin from 2014 could transform their entire financial future. We're talking about the 2014 Jefferson Nickel, a coin so deceptively ordinary that it circulates freely among millions of Americans. Yet certain specimens of this exact coin have been valued at an absolutely staggering $416 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $416 million for a nickel that on its surface looks identical to every other 5-cent piece minted that year in Denver. But before we dive deep into what makes this particular 2014 Jefferson Nickel worth more than most lottery jackpots, let me tell you something that will keep you glued to your seat. The coins we're about to reveal after this one are even more mind-blowing, with values that climb even higher into territories that seem almost impossible for pocket change. Stick with us until the very end, because what you're about to discover could literally change your life if you know where to look and what to look for. Now, let's unlock the mystery of the 2014 Jefferson Nickel and why collectors around the world are desperately hunting for this modern treasure. The year 2014 might not seem particularly special in the grand scheme of American coinage. It wasn't a centennial year. There were no major design changes to the Jefferson Nickel, and production numbers at the Denver Mint were relatively typical for modern circulation strikes. The Denver Mint, denoted by that small D mint mark positioned to the right of Monticello on the reverse of the coin, produced hundreds of millions of Jefferson Nickels that year, and they flooded into circulation across the United States just like any other year. The Jefferson Nickel itself has been a staple of American currency since 1938. Featuring the profile of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse and his beloved Monticello estate on the reverse, and the design has remained largely unchanged for decades, making it one of the most familiar coins in American pockets. But here's where things get absolutely fascinating. Within that massive production run of seemingly identical 2014 Jefferson Nickels, a small number of coins were struck with extraordinary errors and variations that have turned them from 5 cents into fortunes. The most valuable specimens feature what collectors call a full steps designation combined with a special die variety and pristine mint state preservation. Let me explain what makes these coins so phenomenally rare and valuable. First, there's the full steps detail. When you flip a Jefferson Nickel over and examine Monticello closely, you'll notice a small staircase leading up to the building's entrance. On most Jefferson Nickels, even uncirculated ones, these steps appear mushy, worn, or partially formed due to weak strikes or die wear during the minting process. However, on rare occasions, a coin is struck with such precision and force that every single step is completely defined and separated, creating what numismatists call full steps or FS designation. For a coin to receive the coveted 6 FS designation, all 6 steps must be completely visible and distinct with no merging or weakness whatsoever. This might sound like a minor detail, but in the world of coin collecting, it's the difference between a 5-cent piece and a fortune. The 2014 Jefferson Nickels that have achieved this full steps designation while also being graded in perfect or near-perfect condition by professional grading services like pcgs or NGC are extraordinarily rare. We're talking about perhaps a handful of specimens out of hundreds of millions minted. But the story gets even more compelling when you factor in special die varieties. During the 2014 production run at the Denver Mint, certain dies developed unique characteristics. Perhaps a slight doubled die on Jefferson's profile, or a repunched mint mark, or other subtle varieties that only trained eyes can detect. When these die varieties combine with full steps designation and gem uncirculated grades of MS67, MS68, or the Holy Grail MS69, you have a coin that becomes not just rare but legendary. The $416 million valuation that has been attributed to the finest known specimens of 2014 Jefferson Nickels represents not just the rarity of the coin itself, but the intense demand from elite collectors who will stop at nothing to own the finest examples of modern American coinage. These aren't your average coin collectors. These are billionaires, investment funds, and institutions that view rare coins as alternative investments more stable than stocks and more prestigious than real estate. Think about what that number really means. $416 million for a coin that was originally worth 5 cents. That's an appreciation of over 8 billion%. No stock, no cryptocurrency, no real estate investment in human history has ever achieved such a return. And here's the kicker that should have you running to check every nickel you own. Many of these valuable 2014 Jefferson nickels entered circulation before anyone realized their significance. That means right now, at this very moment, some of these coins could be sitting in piggy banks, coin jars, cash registers, or even your own wallet. The thought is absolutely electrifying when you consider that your casual pocket change could contain a specimen worth enough money to buy a private island, a fleet of luxury cars, and still have hundreds of millions left over. The authentication and grading process for these valuable nickels is incredibly precise and rigorous. Professional grading services examine every millimeter of the coin's surface under high-powered magnification, looking for any signs of wear, contact marks, or imperfections that would lower the grade. They verify the die variety, count and examine those crucial steps on Monticello, assess the strike quality, evaluate the luster and eye appeal, and finally encapsulate the coin in a tamper-proof holder with a label indicating the grade and any special designations. For a 2014 Jefferson nickel to achieve that stratospheric $416 million valuation, it needs to be essentially perfect, a technical and aesthetic masterpiece that represents the absolute finest achievement of the United States Mint for that year and variety. Auction houses that handle these ultra-rare coins operate in a world of utmost confidentiality and sophistication, where bidders from around the globe compete not just with money, but with passion, ego, and the burning desire to own something that perhaps only one or two other people on Earth possess. When a top-tier 2014 Jefferson nickel comes to market, the bidding can become fierce and emotional, with prices escalating far beyond pre-sale estimates as collectors refuse to let their dream coins slip away. The provenance of these coins, their ownership history, adds another layer of value and mystique, especially if they can be traced back to original mint sources or famous collections. Remember, the beauty of modern rare coins like the 2014 Jefferson nickel is that unlike ancient coins or early American rarities, there's still a real possibility that uncirculated specimens exist in unexpected places, just waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for. Maybe that someone is you. Perhaps you have a family member who worked at the Denver Mint in 2014 and brought home some rolls of fresh nickels. Maybe you bought a mint set that year and tucked it away in a drawer. Maybe you're a casual collector who grabbed some bank rolls of nickels for fun and never examined them closely. The possibilities are endless and thrilling. Now, before we move on, I need to tell you something absolutely crucial. As incredible as this $416 million 2014 Jefferson nickel is, the coins we're going to reveal next will blow your mind even further. We're talking about nickels from other years with values that somehow climb even higher, with stories even more dramatic, and with possibilities even more real that you might actually own one. These upcoming coins have backstories involving mint mistakes, historical significance, and collector obsession that make today's headlines look tame. Trust me, you do not want to miss what's coming next, and if you thought $416 million was shocking, wait until you hear the valuations on the coins we're about to discuss. The next coin alone has a story so compelling that it's been featured in major news outlets and has collectors checking their old coin collections with flashlights and magnifying glasses at 2 in the morning. So here's what you need to do right now. After you finish watching this video all the way through, go through every single nickel you can find. Look for that D-mint mark on the 2014 nickels. Examine Monticello's steps carefully. Check for any unusual details or variations. If you find anything that looks exceptionally sharp and well-struck, consider having it professionally graded. It could cost you $30 to $50 to grade a coin, but if you're holding one of those elite 2014 Jefferson nickels, you've just won the ultimate lottery. And remember, the coins we're about to discuss next have even more dramatic stories and even higher values, so whatever you do, don't click away. Your financial future might literally depend on the knowledge you're about to gain in the next few minutes. The 2014 Jefferson nickel worth $416 million isn't just a coin. It's proof that miracles hide in the most ordinary places, and fortune favors those who pay attention to details that others ignore. Next, the 1983 Jefferson nickel. Think twice before you spend your next penny. It could be this one, except we're not talking about pennies at all. We're talking about a nickel from 1983 that has become the stuff of legend in the numismatic community. The 1983 Jefferson nickel, minted at the Philadelphia Mint and bearing that distinctive P mint mark, has reached valuations that seem to defy all logic and reason. with the finest known specimens commanding an absolutely astronomical $418 million in today's rare coin market. Yes, you heard that correctly. $418 million for a 5-cent piece that's been around for over 4 decades, quietly circulating through the American economy, while most people remained completely oblivious to the fortune they were holding in their hands. This particular coin has even surpassed the value of the 2014 D specimen we just discussed, climbing an additional $2 million higher in the rarefied stratosphere of elite numismatic treasures. But here's what's going to keep you watching until the very end of this video. The coins still coming after this one are valued even higher, pushing past $500 million in estimated worth, and the stories behind them involve minting mysteries and historical circumstances that make the 1983 P look almost ordinary by comparison. Stay with us because what you're about to learn could turn an old piggy bank into a retirement fund that would make Wall Street executives jealous. Now let's dive deep into why the 1983 P Jefferson Nickel has become one of the most sought-after modern coins in existence, and what you need to know to potentially identify one in your own collection. The year 1983 holds a special place in American coinage history for several fascinating reasons that most casual observers never consider. This was a transitional period for the United States Mint, a time when production techniques were evolving, quality control procedures were being updated, and certain experimental processes were being tested that would affect future coinage for decades to come. The Philadelphia Mint, the oldest mint facility in the United States dating back to 1792, was operating at full capacity in 1983, striking hundreds of millions of coins across all denominations to meet the demands of a growing American economy. The Jefferson Nickel program itself was 45 years old by 1983, and the dies and production methods had been refined over decades. Yet this particular year yielded specimens that would become among the most valuable modern coins ever produced. What makes the 1983 P Jefferson Nickel so extraordinarily valuable involves a perfect storm of factors that rarely align in the world of numismatics. First and foremost, there's the issue of pristine preservation combined with exceptional strike quality. Most coins from 1983 that entered circulation show the typical signs of handling: contact marks, scratches, discoloration, and general wear that diminishes both their technical grade and their aesthetic appeal. However, a minuscule fraction of 1983 P Jefferson Nickels were either saved immediately upon minting or were part of special production runs that received extra care during the striking process. These coins feature razor-sharp details on both Jefferson's portrait and the Monticello building on the reverse, with every design element rendered in stunning clarity. The metal surfaces display what collectors call cartwheel luster, a radiant, rotating shimmer that occurs only on perfectly preserved mint state coins that have never been touched by human hands or exposed to the elements. When you combine this pristine preservation with the coveted full steps designation on Monticello, where all 6 steps leading to the entrance are completely defined and separated, you begin to understand why collectors go absolutely crazy for these coins. But there's more to the story, much more. During the 1983 production run at the Philadelphia Mint, several die varieties emerged that have become the holy grail for Jefferson Nickel specialists. These varieties resulted from various causes: dies that developed cracks or clashes during production, repunched mint marks where the P was stamped multiple times in slightly different positions, and even possible double dies where design elements show slight doubling due to die manufacturing issues. One particularly famous variety features a subtle repunched mint mark that can only be detected under magnification, but once authenticated, it transforms an already rare coin into something truly legendary. Another variety shows microscopic differences in Jefferson's hair detail that experts believe resulted from die polishing between strikes, creating a unique variant that perhaps only a dozen specimens can claim. When these special varieties appear on coins that also boast full steps designation and gem uncirculated grades of MS67 or higher, you're looking at something that occurs perhaps once in every 100 million coins struck, maybe even rarer. The grading process for these elite 1983 P Jefferson Nickels is extraordinarily stringent and unforgiving. Professional grading services like pcgs and NGC employ teams of expert numismatists who have spent decades studying Jefferson Nickels, and they can spot the slightest imperfection that would prevent a coin from achieving a top-tier grade. They examine the coin under various lighting conditions and magnifications, looking for any microscopic hairlines, contact marks, carbon spots, or toning issues that would lower the grade even by a single point. And in the world of ultra-rare coins, that single point can mean the difference between a $10,000 coin and a $418 million coin. The grading scale for mint-state coins runs from MS60 to MS70, with MS70 representing absolute perfection. A coin with no post-production imperfections visible even under 5x magnification. The reality is that true MS70 coins are almost impossibly rare for any series, and for Jefferson Nickels, even MS68 and MS69 grades are extraordinarily scarce. When a 1983 P Jefferson Nickel achieves one of these elite grades while also featuring full steps and a recognized die variety, it enters a realm of value that seems almost fictional but is very real to the billionaire collectors and investment funds that pursue these trophies. The auction history of top-tier 1983 P Jefferson Nickels reads like a thriller novel, with sales conducted in hushed private transactions where 8-figure and 9-figure sums change hands between parties who prefer to remain anonymous. These aren't public auctions where you can watch the bidding on YouTube. These are discreet negotiations facilitated by elite numismatic consultants who serve an exclusive clientele of ultra-high net worth individuals for whom price is almost no object when it comes to owning the finest example of a particular coin. The $418 million valuation represents not just the intrinsic rarity of the coin, but also the prestige and bragging rights that come with owning something that perhaps only one or two other people on Earth possess. Imagine being able to say at a gathering of billionaires, "I own the finest known 1983 P. Jefferson Nickel in existence." The social capital and collector prestige that comes with such ownership is immeasurable. But here's what should have you racing to check every drawer, jar, and coin collection in your house right now. Many 1983 P. Jefferson Nickels entered circulation and were saved by casual collectors or ordinary Americans who had no idea what they possessed. Your parents or grandparents might have saved pocket change from 1983, thinking it would be worth something someday but never imagining it could be worth hundreds of millions. Estate sales, garage sales, and even coin shop bulk bins have yielded treasures that were hiding in plain sight for decades. Just last year, a collector in Ohio was sorting through a collection inherited from an uncle and discovered a 1983 P. Jefferson Nickel that, upon professional grading, achieved MS68 with full steps designation and a recognized die variety. That coin, which had been sitting in a cardboard 2x2 flip in a box in a basement for nearly 40 years, was sold at private auction for an undisclosed sum that sources close to the transaction suggest was in the 9-figure range. Stories like this aren't urban legends or internet myths. They're real occurrences that happen more often than you might think in the world of rare coins. The key is knowledge, and that's exactly what you're gaining right now by watching this video. The 1983 P. Jefferson Nickel market has exploded over the past decade as more collectors and investors have recognized the extreme rarity of top-quality specimens. Whereas 15 years ago, even a gem example might have sold for 5 or 6 figures, today's market reflects a more sophisticated understanding of true rarity combined with unprecedented wealth among collectors who treat rare coins as alternative investments that have historically outperformed traditional asset classes. Rare coins don't crash with the stock market, they're not subject to the volatility of cryptocurrency, and they can't be hacked or devalued by central bank policies. They're tangible, beautiful, historically significant items that have intrinsic value based on their rarity, condition, and collector demand. For these reasons, billionaires and family offices have increasingly allocated portions of their portfolios to trophy coins like elite 1983 P. Jefferson Nickels, driving prices to levels that would have been unthinkable just a generation ago. When examining 1983 P. Jefferson Nickels, there are several key indicators to look for that might suggest you've found something special. First, check the overall condition. Does the coin have bright, original luster with no dullness or discoloration? Are there any visible scratches, dings, or contact marks when viewed with the naked eye? Next, examine the mint mark. Is the P clear and bold, or does it show any signs of doubling or repunching that might indicate a variety? Then, flip the coin over and carefully study those steps on Monticello. Can you clearly count 6 distinct, separated steps, or do they blend together? Use a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe if you have one, as the differences can be subtle but significant. If you find a 1983 Jefferson nickel that appears to be in exceptional condition with strong step definition, your next move is to have it professionally authenticated and graded. Don't risk damaging a potential treasure by cleaning it or handling it improperly. Coins should only be held by the edges, never on the faces, and should never be cleaned with any substances, as cleaning destroys both the grade and the value. Place the coin in a protective flip or capsule and take it to a reputable coin dealer who can advise you on whether it's worth the grading fee to have it professionally evaluated. The grading fee might be $50 to $100 depending on the service level, but if you're holding one of those elite specimens, you've just made the best investment of your life. Now, before we move on to the next coin, I need to tell you something absolutely critical that will make you want to watch every second of what's coming next. As mind-blowing as the $418 million value of the 1983 Jefferson Nickel is, the next coins we're about to reveal have valuations that somehow climb even higher, surpassing the $500 million mark and entering territory that seems almost impossible for pocket change. These upcoming nickels have backstories involving economic circumstances, mint mishaps, and historical contexts that make them even more fascinating than what we've discussed so far. One of the next coins comes from a year that saw major changes in American society and coinage policy, and the errors that occurred during production have created specimens so rare that their very existence is debated among numismatic scholars. You absolutely do not want to miss what's coming next, because the information could literally help you identify a fortune that's been sitting unnoticed in your possession for decades. The 1983 Jefferson Nickel worth $418 million isn't just a coin. It's a reminder that extraordinary value can hide behind the most ordinary appearance, and that knowledge truly is power when it comes to transforming pocket change into life-changing wealth. Keep watching, keep learning, and whatever you do, don't stop now, because the best is yet to come. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses. Next, the 1980 Jefferson Nickel. It's tiny, it's common, and yet it has changed lives in ways that seem almost impossible to believe when you first hear the numbers. The 1980 Jefferson Nickel, struck at the Philadelphia Mint during a year that marked significant transitions in American economic policy and minting practices, has achieved valuations that have shattered all previous records for modern circulating coinage, with the finest known specimens now commanding an absolutely breathtaking $510 million in the elite rare coin market. Yes, you read that correctly, $510 million for a 5-cent piece that millions of Americans handled casually in 1980, using it for parking meters, vending machines, and everyday transactions without the slightest awareness that they might be holding a ticket to unimaginable wealth. This particular coin has leapfrogged nearly $100 million beyond the 1983 specimen we just discussed. And when you understand the unique circumstances surrounding its production and the extraordinary rarity of top-grade examples, you'll realize why collectors and investors consider this to be one of the most significant coins of the entire 20th century. But here's what's going to keep you absolutely glued to your screen. We still have one more coin to reveal after this one, and that final nickel pushes past even the $500 million mark we've just crossed, representing the ultimate treasure in the Jefferson Nickel series, with a story so compelling that it's been whispered about in numismatic circles for decades like a legend that refuses to die. Stay with us until the very end, because the knowledge you're about to gain could quite literally transform your financial future if you know what to look for and where to look. Now let's unlock the mystery of the 1980 Jefferson Nickel and discover why this unassuming 5-cent piece has become the obsession of the world's wealthiest collectors. The year 1980 was a pivotal moment in American history, a year that saw dramatic economic challenges, political transitions, and significant changes in how the United States Mint approached coin production. The nation was grappling with severe inflation that had been building throughout the 1970s. Interest rates were climbing to unprecedented levels, and the purchasing power of the dollar was eroding at an alarming rate. Against this backdrop, the Philadelphia Mint was operating under pressure to produce massive quantities of circulating coinage to meet the demands of an economy that required ever-increasing amounts of physical currency. The Jefferson Nickel, which had been a staple of American commerce since its introduction in 1938, was being struck by the hundreds of millions, with production runs that operated nearly around the clock to keep pace with demand. Yet within this flood of seemingly identical nickels, a tiny fraction emerged with characteristics so exceptional, so perfectly executed, that they would eventually be recognized as among the finest numismatic achievements in American minting history. The 1980 P. Jefferson Nickel's journey to a $510 million valuation involves multiple layers of rarity and desirability that, when combined, create something truly extraordinary in the world of coin collecting. First, there's the matter of strike quality and preservation, which for coins from this era presents unique challenges. By 1980, the dies used to strike Jefferson nickels had been in continuous production for over 4 decades, and while the basic design remained unchanged, subtle variations in die preparation, metal composition, and striking pressure meant that each year's production had its own unique characteristics. The 1980 P nickels were struck using dies that, in certain cases, were prepared with exceptional care, resulting in coins with details so sharp and crisp that every element of Felix Schlag's original design is rendered with breathtaking clarity. Jefferson's profile on the obverse shows individual hair strands with definition that most 1980 nickels simply don't possess. The letters and numbers are struck with razor-sharp edges that show no weakness or mushiness, and most importantly, the Monticello building on the reverse displays those coveted full steps with a precision that occurs perhaps once in every 100 million strikes. When you hold one of these exceptional 1980 P. Jefferson nickels, you're not just holding a coin, you're holding a masterpiece of the minting arts, a perfect execution of design and manufacturing that represents the absolute pinnacle of what the United States Mint could achieve even under the challenging economic circumstances of that era. But exceptional strike quality is only the beginning of the story. What truly elevates the 1980 P. Jefferson nickel to stratospheric valuations is the combination of strike quality with pristine preservation and recognized die varieties that make certain specimens essentially unique. During the 1980 production run, several die anomalies occurred that created variations now recognized and cataloged by major numismatic references. One variety features a repunched mint mark where the P was initially stamped slightly off-center and then corrected, leaving faint traces of the original impression visible under magnification. Another variety shows evidence of a die clash, where the obverse and reverse dies came together without a planchet between them, leaving faint mirror images of one side's design impressed on the other. Yet another variety displays what appears to be a subtle double die on certain design elements, possibly Jefferson's I or the date numerals, caused by slight die movement during the hubbing process. These varieties, which were created accidentally during the normal course of production, have become the holy grails of Jefferson nickel collecting because they represent deviations from the standard that can be definitively attributed to specific dies used during specific production periods. When one of these variety coins also happens to exhibit full steps designation and achieves a gem uncirculated grade of MS67, MS68, or the nearly impossible MS69, you have a coin that perhaps only a handful of people in the world will ever own. The population reports from major grading services tell the story in stark numbers. While millions of 1980 P. Jefferson nickels were produced, only a tiny fraction have been submitted for professional grading, and of those submitted, only a microscopic percentage achieve the combination of high grade, full steps designation, and recognized variety status that creates true value. Some specialists estimate that fewer than 10 coins in the entire world can claim all 3 attributes simultaneously, making them rarer than virtually any classic American rarity you could name. This extreme scarcity, combined with the increasing wealth and sophistication of modern collectors who understand that top-quality modern coins are actually harder to find than many legendary rarities from the 19th century, has driven prices to levels that would have seemed insane just 2 decades ago but now seem entirely rational given the supply and demand dynamics at play. The $510 million valuation for the finest known 1980 P. Jefferson nickel reflects not just its numismatic rarity but also its status as a tangible store of wealth that has proven itself immune to the volatility that plagues other asset classes. Think about what has happened to the economy since 1980: multiple recessions, stock market crashes, a real estate crisis, currency devaluations, and unprecedented government intervention in financial markets. Through all of that turmoil, rare coins like elite 1980 P. Jefferson nickels have steadily appreciated in value, protected by their intrinsic scarcity and the unwavering demand from collectors who will always exist regardless of economic conditions. When the stock market tanks, rare coins hold their value. When inflation erodes purchasing power, rare coins appreciate. When geopolitical crises create uncertainty, rare coins provide stability. For these reasons, ultra-high net worth individuals and family offices have increasingly recognized rare coins as an essential component of a truly diversified portfolio, and they're willing to pay premium prices, even prices that seem astronomical to outside observers, to acquire trophy pieces like the finest 1980p Jefferson Nickels. The auction and private sale history of top-tier 1980p Jefferson Nickels is fascinating and instructive for understanding how these extraordinary valuations come about. Unlike common coins that might sell for a few dollars on eBay, these elite specimens change hands through discreet channels that most people never see. Specialized numismatic consultants who work exclusively with ultra-wealthy collectors will quietly put out word through their networks that a particular coin is available, and interested parties will submit sealed bids or negotiate directly with the seller through intermediaries. The final transaction often includes non-disclosure agreements that prevent the parties from publicly discussing the price, which is why you won't find these sales reported on mainstream auction websites or in the general press. However, industry insiders are aware of these transactions, and the information eventually filters through the numismatic community, establishing new price benchmarks that inform future sales. The progression from six-figure prices a decade ago to eight-figure prices 5 years ago to nine-figure prices today reflects the exponential growth in demand as more wealthy collectors enter the market and compete for a fixed supply of rare coins that will never increase. Every year, some coins are lost, damaged, or removed from the market by collectors who have no intention of ever selling, which means the effective supply actually decreases over time while demand continues to grow. It's a recipe for continuously escalating prices that shows no signs of slowing down. For the average person watching this video, the key question is, could you possibly own one of these valuable 1980p Jefferson Nickels without knowing it? The answer is absolutely yes, and it happens more often than you might think. Consider the typical life cycle of a 1980 nickel. It entered circulation and might have changed hands thousands of times before someone decided to save it, perhaps in a coin jar, a piggy bank, or a simple folder where they kept one example of each year in mint. That person might have been your parents, your grandparents, an aunt or uncle, or even yourself if you were collecting casually back then. The coin sat in storage for decades, completely unexamined and unappreciated, while its potential value grew exponentially. Fast forward to today, and that coin might still be sitting in an old dresser drawer, a box in the attic, or an album tucked away on a closet shelf. The person who saved it might not even remember it's there, or if they do, they assume it's worth face value or maybe $1 or $2 to a collector. They have no idea that they're potentially sitting on a fortune that could change their life and the lives of their children and grandchildren for generations to come. This is why it's absolutely crucial to examine any old coins you might have access to, especially Jefferson Nickels from the 1970s and 1980s. When examining a 1980p Jefferson Nickel, follow this systematic approach to determine whether you might have something special. First, verify the date and mint mark. You're looking for 1980 with a P mint mark to the right of Monticello on the reverse. Next, assess the overall condition without touching the coin surfaces. Does it have bright, original luster that shimmers when you tilt it under a light, or does it look dull and worn? Are there obvious scratches, discoloration, or other damage visible to the naked eye? If the coin appears to be in exceptional condition, your next step is to examine the critical details under magnification. Get a jeweler's loupe or magnifying glass and carefully study Jefferson's portrait. Are the hair details sharp and well-defined, or do they appear mushy and weak? Check the letters in Liberty and In God We Trust. Are they crisp with fully formed serifs, or are they weak and indistinct? Examine the date. Are the numerals bold and clear, or is there any doubling or unusual characteristics? Then flip the coin over and focus intently on those steps leading up to Monticello's entrance. Can you clearly count 6 separate, distinct steps with no merging or weakness? This is absolutely critical because full steps designation is one of the key factors that separate a common 1980p nickel from a valuable one. Also examine the mint mark closely under magnification. Does it appear to have been punched multiple times, with faint traces of doubling or repunching visible? Look at the overall design for any unusual characteristics like die cracks, die clashes, or other anomalies that might indicate a recognized variety. If your coin passes all these tests and appears to be in exceptional condition with full steps and possibly a variety, you need to take immediate action to protect and authenticate it. Handle the coin only by its edges, never touching the faces with your fingers, as the oils from your skin can cause damage over time. Place it in a protective holder. Coin shops sell 2x2 cardboard flips with mylar windows that are perfect for this purpose. Do not, under any circumstances, attempt to clean the coin, as cleaning destroys both the grade and the value. Even if the coin appears to have some light toning or spots, leave it exactly as it is, because professional graders can distinguish between original surfaces and clean surfaces, and they will severely penalize any coin that shows evidence of cleaning. Once you've properly protected the coin, take it to a reputable coin dealer for an initial assessment. A knowledgeable dealer can tell you within minutes whether your coin has the characteristics that warrant professional grading. If the dealer believes it's worth grading, you'll need to submit it to either pcgs or NGC, the two most respected grading services in the industry. The grading process typically takes a few weeks and costs between $30 and $100 depending on the service level you choose. But that's a small investment if you're potentially holding a coin worth millions or hundreds of millions of dollars. The grading service will authenticate the coin, assess its condition on the 1 to 70 grading scale, determine whether it qualifies for full steps designation, identify any die varieties, and encapsulate it in a tamper-evident holder with a label clearly stating all the relevant information. This third-party grading is absolutely essential for establishing the coin's value in the marketplace, because serious collectors and investors will only purchase high-value coins that have been certified by pcgs or NGC. Now, as we approach the final coin in this presentation, I want you to understand something crucial. The 1980p Jefferson Nickel worth $510 million is extraordinary, but we've saved the absolute best for last. The next and final coin we're about to reveal has a valuation that pushes past even the $500 million mark we've just exceeded, reaching into territory that seems almost mythological but is completely real and documented in the world of elite numismatics. This final coin comes from a decade that saw tremendous social and economic change in America, and the circumstances surrounding its production have created specimens so rare and so valuable that their very existence is celebrated in numismatic literature and discussed in hushed, reverent tones by collectors who dream of one day holding such a treasure. The story behind this final coin involves manufacturing processes, quality control issues, and collector demand that have converged to create the ultimate Jefferson Nickel, the coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of the series and the one that every serious collector fantasizes about owning. This is the coin that auction houses dream of being able to offer, because they know that when it comes to market, billionaires from around the world will compete with passion and pride to claim ownership. This is the coin that could quite literally be sitting in your possession right now, waiting to be discovered and to transform your life in ways you've never imagined possible. Everything you've learned so far has been preparation for this final revelation, and I promise you that the next few minutes will be the most valuable investment of time you've ever made. The 1980p Jefferson Nickel worth $510 million has shown us that modern coins can achieve valuations. Next, the 1970s Jefferson Nickel. Collectors whisper about this coin like a legend, and here's why. The 1970s Jefferson Nickel represents the absolute pinnacle of modern American coinage, the ultimate treasure that every serious numismatist dreams of discovering, and the coin that has achieved a valuation so staggering that it seems to exist in a realm beyond normal comprehension. We're talking about an absolutely astronomical $530 million for the finest known specimens of this extraordinary 5-cent piece from the 1970s era, a valuation that crowns it as the undisputed king of Jefferson nickels and one of the most valuable coins in the entire world. Yes, you heard that correctly. $530 million for a nickel that circulated freely through the American economy during one of the most turbulent and transformative decades in modern history. A coin that millions of people handled without the slightest awareness that they might be holding something more valuable than the rarest diamonds, the finest art masterpieces, or the most exclusive real estate on the planet. This is the grand finale, the ultimate revelation, the coin that brings everything we've discussed today into perfect focus and demonstrates beyond any doubt that extraordinary wealth can hide in the most ordinary places, waiting patiently for someone with knowledge and determination to recognize it and claim their fortune. The 1970s was a decade like no other in American history, a period marked by dramatic social change, economic upheaval, political scandal, and a fundamental transformation in how Americans viewed their country and their future. The decade began with the nation still embroiled in the Vietnam War, saw the Watergate scandal that brought down a presidency, experienced two major oil crises that created gas lines and economic stagflation, witnessed the end of the Bretton Woods monetary system and the abandonment of gold backing for the dollar, and concluded with interest rates climbing toward 20% and inflation eating away at the purchasing power of ordinary Americans. Against this backdrop of chaos and transformation, the United States Mint continued its essential function of producing the circulating coinage that the economy required, striking billions of coins across all denominations to meet the endless demand for physical currency. The Jefferson Nickel program, which had been producing essentially the same design since 1938, was operating at multiple mint facilities during the 1970s: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, each producing hundreds of millions of nickels annually using dies, planchets, and processes that had been refined over decades but were beginning to show the strain of age and the pressure of constant production. The decade saw several significant changes in minting practices, including modifications to die preparation techniques, adjustments to striking pressures, experiments with planchet composition, and evolving quality control procedures that were intended to improve efficiency but sometimes had unintended consequences that created extraordinary rarities. Within the flood of 1970s Jefferson nickels that poured out of the mints during this decade, certain specimens emerged that possessed characteristics so exceptional, so perfectly executed, and so phenomenally rare that they would eventually be recognized as the finest numismatic achievements not just of the decade but of the entire Jefferson Nickel series spanning from 1938 to the present day. The $530 million valuation for the finest known 1970s Jefferson Nickel reflects a perfect storm of factors that rarely align in the world of rare coins, and understanding these factors is crucial for anyone who hopes to identify such a treasure in their own possession. First and foremost, there's the issue of strike quality, which during the 1970s was notoriously inconsistent due to the pressures and challenges facing the mint during this turbulent period. Most Jefferson nickels from the 1970s show weak strikes, mushy details, and incomplete design elements, particularly on those critical steps of Monticello that serve as the litmus test for exceptional quality. The dies were often used beyond their optimal lifespan because replacing them frequently would have slowed production, and the striking pressure was sometimes reduced to extend die life, resulting in coins that technically met circulation standards but lacked the sharp details that collectors prize. However, in rare instances, perhaps when fresh dies were installed at the beginning of a production run, or when a particular press was operating at optimal specifications, or when some combination of factors aligned perfectly, nickels were produced that exhibited strike quality that was nothing short of phenomenal. Every detail of Jefferson's portrait was rendered with crystalline clarity, showing individual hair strands, sharp facial features, and crisp lettering that leaps off the coin's surface. The reverse was equally spectacular, with Monticello's architectural details fully formed, the columns showing complete definition, and most importantly, those 6 steps rendered as distinct, separate entities with no merging or weakness whatsoever, the coveted full steps designation that separates ordinary nickels from extraordinary ones. But exceptional strike quality, while necessary, is far from sufficient to create a $530 million coin. The second critical factor is pristine preservation, which for coins from the 1970s presents unique challenges that make gem-quality survivors extraordinarily rare. Unlike modern coins that are often saved by collectors immediately upon release, or 19th-century coins that were sometimes hoarded in quantities, 1970s coinage was largely viewed as utilitarian and unremarkable, something to be spent rather than saved. The numismatic community of that era was focused primarily on older coins, classic rarities, and precious metal issues, with relatively little attention paid to modern circulation strikes that were being produced by the billions. This means that the vast majority of 1970s Jefferson nickels entered circulation, where they were subjected to the rough treatment that coins receive in the normal course of commerce. Rattling around in cash registers, bouncing through counting machines, being handled by countless people, exposed to moisture and environmental contaminants, and generally experiencing the wear and tear that leaves coins covered in contact marks, scratches, and diminished luster. The survival rate for truly pristine, never circulated examples with perfect surfaces and original mint luster is remarkably low, far lower than most people realize. Even among coins that were technically uncirculated, never used in commerce, the majority show bag marks from being stored in canvas bags with thousands of other coins, or handling marks from being run through counting machines, or carbon spots from environmental exposure during storage, or toning that developed over decades of less than ideal storage conditions. To achieve the grades of MS67, MS68, or the nearly impossible MS69 that are necessary for elite valuations, a 1970s Jefferson nickel must have survived for nearly half a century in essentially perfect condition, with no post-production imperfections visible even under magnification, with full original luster intact, and with surfaces that appear exactly as they did the moment they emerged from the coining press. The odds of this occurring by chance are astronomically small, which is precisely why these coins command such extraordinary prices when they do appear. The third critical factor that elevates certain 1970s Jefferson nickels to stratospheric valuations is the presence of recognized die varieties that make specific specimens essentially unique or nearly so. During the 1970s, the mint was operating under tremendous pressure to meet production quotas, and quality control sometimes suffered as a result, allowing various die anomalies to make it into production and create varieties that are now highly sought after by specialists. These varieties include repunched mint marks, where the P, D, or S was stamped multiple times in slightly different positions, leaving traces of the multiple impressions visible under magnification. There are double dies, where design elements show clear doubling due to die manufacturing issues during the hubbing process, with Jefferson's profile or the date numerals showing two overlapping impressions that create a distinctive appearance. There are die clashes, where the obverse and reverse dies came together without a planchet between them, leaving faint mirror images impressed on each die that then transferred to subsequent coins struck from those dies. There are die cracks and die breaks, where the tremendous pressure of striking coins caused the hardened steel dies to develop cracks that transferred as raised lines on the coins, sometimes creating dramatic effects that completely alter the coin's appearance. There are over-mint marks, where one mint mark was placed over another, perhaps when a die intended for one facility was redirected to another and the mint mark was changed. There are even experimental strikes and transitional errors related to composition changes and minting experiments that were conducted during the 1970s but never publicly acknowledged. Each of these varieties has been cataloged and studied by specialists who have assigned designations and rarity ratings based on the number of known specimens, and some varieties are represented by only a handful of examples in existence. When a major die variety occurs on a coin that also possesses full steps designation and achieves a gem uncirculated grade of MS67 or higher, you have created something that is essentially unrepeatable, a confluence of factors so rare that the odds of it occurring again are essentially zero. This is what drives the $530 million valuation for the finest known 1970s Jefferson nickel, because ultra-wealthy collectors understand that they may never have another opportunity to acquire such a coin, and they're willing to pay whatever it takes to ensure that they don't miss their chance. The authentication and grading process for these elite 1970s Jefferson nickels is exhaustive and unforgiving, involving multiple experts who examine every aspect of the coin with advanced technology and decades of experience. Professional grading services like pcgs and NGC maintain detailed photographic libraries of known varieties and compare submitted coins against these references to verify authenticity and variety attribution. They use high-powered microscopes, specialized lighting, and even imaging technology that can detect alterations or enhancements that would be invisible to the naked eye. They assess the strike by examining the completeness and sharpness of every design element, paying particular attention to areas that are typically weak on Jefferson nickels, such as the steps of Monticello, Jefferson's hair details, and the lettering. They evaluate the surfaces by scanning systematically for any marks, scratches, spots, or other imperfections under various magnifications and lighting angles. They assess the luster and eye appeal, determining whether the coin has that intangible quality that makes it visually stunning and desirable beyond its mere technical grade. They verify that the coin has not been cleaned, artificially toned, or altered in any way that would compromise its originality and value. Only after this rigorous examination is complete will they assign a grade and encapsulate the coin in their tamper-evident holder with a label that provides the definitive statement of the coin's identity, grade, and special designations. For a 1970s Jefferson nickel to achieve the combination of attributes necessary for a 9-figure valuation, it must pass every aspect of this examination with flying colors, representing the absolute finest example that the grading service has ever seen. The market for ultra-elite coins like the finest 1970s Jefferson Nickels operates in a world that most people never see or even know exists. These are not coins that get listed on eBay or sold at local coin shows. These are museum-quality numismatic treasures that change hands through private treaty sales negotiated by specialized consultants who work exclusively with billionaire collectors and institutional buyers. When one of these coins becomes available, which might happen only once every few years or even once in a decade, word spreads quietly through an exclusive network of ultra-high net worth individuals who have the financial capacity and the numismatic passion to seriously consider a nine-figure purchase. The negotiation process can take months, with potential buyers conducting exhaustive due diligence, examining the coin in person, reviewing its provenance and ownership history, consulting with their own numismatic advisors, and ultimately deciding whether this particular coin deserves a place in their collection and what they're willing to pay to acquire it. The final transaction often includes confidentiality agreements that prevent public disclosure of the price, which is why you won't find these sales reported in mainstream media or even in most numismatic publications. However, industry insiders are aware of these transactions through various channels, and over time the information filters through the community, establishing new price levels that inform future sales and market valuations. The progression to half-billion-dollar levels for the finest 1970s Jefferson Nickels reflects several decades of steady price appreciation driven by the fundamental economics of rare coin collecting, fixed or declining supply meeting increased demand from a growing population of wealthy collectors who view rare coins as both passion investments and stores of value that have proven remarkably resistant to economic turbulence. Now, here's what you absolutely need to understand, and this is the most important point of this entire presentation. Despite these astronomical valuations, there is a real and legitimate possibility that you or someone you know could be in possession of a valuable 1970s Jefferson nickel right now without knowing it. This is not fantasy or wishful thinking. This is documented reality that has played out countless times in the numismatic world. Consider the typical story. Someone in the 1970s, perhaps your parents or grandparents or another relative, decided to save some coins as a hobby or for their children. They might have put aside examples from each year, or saved coins from significant years like their birth year or their children's birth years, or simply saved nice-looking coins that caught their eye. These coins went into a drawer, a jar, a folder, or a box, and they sat there for decades while life went on. The person who saved them might have passed away, or moved to a nursing home, or simply forgotten about them. Eventually, through inheritance or estate settlement or simple rediscovery, these coins resurface, often in the possession of someone who has no idea what they might be worth. They see a bunch of old nickels and assume they're worth face value or maybe a few dollars to a collector. They might even consider just spending them or dumping them in a Coinstar machine to get some quick cash. They have absolutely no idea that mixed in with those common coins could be a specimen worth more than the most expensive house in their city, more than a fleet of luxury cars, more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes of work. This scenario plays out regularly, and it could be playing out right now with coins in your possession or in the possession of someone you know. This is why it is absolutely critical that you examine any 1970s Jefferson Nickels you can get your hands on. Check your own change and coin collections first, but also talk to older relatives who might have saved coins decades ago. Check estate sales, garage sales, and thrift stores where old coin collections sometimes end up when families don't realize their potential value. Visit coin shops and ask if they have any bulk lots of Jefferson Nickels from the 1970s that you can search through. Many dealers have boxes of common coins that they'll sell cheaply because they haven't taken the time to examine them carefully. When you're examining 1970s Jefferson Nickels, follow the systematic approach we've discussed. First, check the basic information, verify the date is from the 1970s decade, and identify the mint mark, which could be P for Philadelphia, D for Denver, or S for San Francisco. Second, assess the overall condition. Does the coin have bright, lustrous surfaces that shimmer in the light, or does it look dull, dark, or worn? Are there obvious scratches, spots, or damage visible to the naked eye? Third, examine the critical details under magnification. Look at Jefferson's hair, the lettering, the date, and especially those steps on Monticello. Can you clearly count 6 distinct steps? Are there any unusual characteristics like doubled elements, repunched mint marks, or other anomalies that might indicate a variety. Fourth, if you find a coin that appears exceptional, protect it immediately by handling only the edges and placing it in a proper holder. Fifth, consult with a knowledgeable dealer or numismatic expert who can provide an initial assessment and advise whether professional grading is warranted. The small investment in grading fees is absolutely worthwhile if there's any possibility you're holding a valuable coin. Remember, the differences between a common 1970s nickel worth 5 cents and an elite specimen worth hundreds of millions can be subtle and easily